everyone. Thank you, George. Welcome, everyone. This is the October 18th meeting of ending mass incarceration and the death penalty. And we have 7 participants in the meeting. Etta Lamb of the Fannie Lou Hamer branch is here with me in the room. And then we have Joan Goddard, George Friday, Diane Blay, and let me get the gallery view here, Dee Murphy and Robin Lloyd. So there are 7 members in the meeting as we start. And the first item on the agenda is a quick check-in. I'm Teresa Alamine. I am the organizer of the Fannie Lou Hamer branch in Columbus, Georgia, and I'm the convener for the EMIDP subcommittee of advancing human rights. Diane Blay, you're next.
Hi, so I'm Diane Blay, and I'm in the Jane Addams group, the Jane Addams branch, and glad to be here.
Thank you. George Friday.
Greetings, everyone. I'm George Friday. I am the organizer of the Triad branch in North Carolina, and I am convening the Racial Justice Advancing Human Rights Subcommittee. Good to see y'all this morning, afternoon.
Dee Murphy.
Hi, I'm Dee Murphy. I am in the Jane Addams branch and glad to be here today as well. Thank you.
Robin Lloyd.
Yeah, hi everyone. Am I mutated? Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, yeah, so I'm Burlington, Vermont, and I hope everyone saw the Fannie Lou Hamer segment on Democracy Now! About a week ago. Very nice coverage of some of her history.
And what are your roles in WILF US, Robin?
I'm a co-chair of Disarm WILF US.
Great, thank you. Etta Lamb, can you come over a little closer so maybe people can see you in the camera?
Can you see me?
No, because I need to
Oh, right.
turn on my video.
Okay,
So
yes,
come
that's
over a
okay.
little bit more.
Okay. Hello, my name is Etta Lamb, and I'm a new member. I just joined last month, and I'm in the Columbus chapter of the Fannie Lou Hamer.
Thank you, Etta. Okay, so George, I'm looking at the agenda, draft agenda that I sent out. So after the check-in, we're going to do a round of your expectations for the meeting today. So I could take notes, so we'll come back to that after we do the discussion around the proposal for that. So I'll reverse the order. Robin Lloyd, what are your expectations for the meeting today?
Well, to get to know what everyone else is thinking, I could present the 2 groups that I am. I tell you what, let me come in a little later because I want to give the video and I want to show you something. So call on me in a moment or 2.
No, this is not a moment for you to be making a presentation, Robin. It's just saying, what do you want to happen at the meeting today?
All right, I'm looking forward to good things happening at the meeting today.
Great. Dee Murphy, what do you want to happen at the meeting today? What are your expectations?
Hi, this is only my 2nd meeting, so I don't have any expectations at present. I'm just trying to find out what the committee is doing and where I can pitch in.
Thank you. George Friday, what are your expectations?
I'd like us to leave the meeting with an idea of our work or how we're gonna plan and carry out our work as a subcommittee.
Diane Blay.
Well, I just want to clarify if the AHR and what exactly, if there's going to be committees that are joining or whatever, to learn about that, in addition to what everybody else has said. So,
Okay, and Robin Lloyd, Joan Goddard.
Okay. I didn't understand at the end of what Diane said. Did everybody else understand? And then I'll catch on later.
I think
Well,
that
well,
was-
we'll get back to expectations. She said she wanted to understand, clarify the AHR, which is really our structure proposal discussion, and I think something will come out of that. So, Joan, what's your expectation?
Okay. Yes, I'm basically wanting to see what we can do about the subject matter of this committee, and we'll get to the structure of AHR when we get to that on the agenda. Thank you.
Well, that's actually the next item on the agenda, to look at a flow chart that will generate some discussion about structure. My expectation is that we will clarify that the committee needs to be a whole committee and not a collection of subcommittees. And the structure proposal is supposed to try to get us there. So George, if you could do the screen share now with a very rough flow chart that we put together, which is basically my proposal. Like all the other committees, it's proposed that this committee has two co-chairs, the ones who work together to build the 3 to 5 year strategic plan, which I was reminded by the Disarm Committee notes that each committee is supposed to have a 3 to 5 year strategic plan, which is getting to your point, George, about the work of the committee. And so we would do that chart. Oh, Edit, if you could turn off the eggs, I think they might be. So if you could, yeah, so that's the 3 to 5 year strategic plan is the work that we have to outline. And so that's a separate topic for how we're gonna be organized to do that. So advancing human rights, two co-chairs who would oversee the subcommittees and make sure that the meeting of the whole is together. So we call it the social justice cluster, which is ending mass incarceration and the death penalty, which is this subcommittee. And I'm the convener at this moment. Immigration justice, which Tina Shelton is a convener. Racial justice, which George Friday is a convener. And we have two committees that are associated with UN activities. So that's called the UN cluster. That's the United Nations Decade for People of African Descent / reparations. In the moment, I'm the convener, but I am trying to get away from the convener role, actually. And so, but I'm thinking that there's somebody in the Black Liberation Caucus who will be able to sign on as a convener. I'm still willing to use my Zoom account, but somebody else would actually be designated as a convener on the UN Decade. And I think we can determine that after the Fannie Lou Hamer Human Rights Conference, where people will learn more about the UN Decade from a very expert presenter. And then the other UN committee, which would seem to be called UN for Women. That's the way it was kind of framed by Barbara Nielsen, who is convener along with Julie, takes in CEDAW and all those things. So this is a very simple proposal that's not very much different from other issue committees, except that we have all these subcommittees that are actually working subcommittees. So advancing human rights has become more advanced in a rather short period of time than many other committees, I think. That's my opinion. So we're taking a stack. So George, help me with the stack. People raise their hands or say stack out loud, you gotta unmute yourself. Robin is unmuted already. So Robin, do you want to comment on the chart?
No, I have no comment right now.
Well, Joan, do you have a comment on the chart?
Yes, I do, actually. As you said, these are all active subcommittees, and I actually know of, one or two more that might be set up. And I don't see that having a structure that, as I understand your proposal, calls for the people from the representatives, the coordinators, the conveners from the different subcommittees to meet. And I thought what you wanted to do was to get to fewer meetings, but obviously those meetings could be done by email and so on. So that may not be a real aspect of it. I just think that these subcommittees are distinct ones. There are several people who are already working with each one of them, and and I think it's good that they are separate. And I know that the Middle East Committee is thinking of going to somewhat the same idea, having some subcommittees, because the Middle East is a large topic, just like our advancing human rights is. I don't know that each of the subcommittees will turn into a full WILF issue committee, but I think that each of them is important and that we should encourage them to meet and to grow. And if they're meeting too often, then meet less often. And I do not see the connection just because it's the UN between the UN ones. So obviously I've been thinking about this and it also, the other part of it is that this is a proposal that this subcommittee would be making to the full committee. It's not something that we decide here today other than whether we want to present it. Is that correct from Teresa and
Well,
George? You've been working on this.
actually, all of the subcommittees that are meeting are asked to discuss the proposal. And this
That's good.
chart is just a way to start the discussion. And I'll
Good.
respond to some of your objections after we hear from other people. So George is on the stack. So go ahead, George.
Joan, do you have a recommendation? I hear the distinct things that you think aren't ideal about this proposal, but what would be your recommendation?
Well, I think the co-chair's idea is good, because even though I have not been exactly, trying to direct or anything, but just these subcommittees, it is something that would be good to be shared and to, for a variety of reasons. And I just think it is absolutely wonderful that we have all of these subcommittees, and I want to see them grow, not shrink into
Well,
one thing. But
Joan,
Teresa will tell us what I'm not understanding or whatever. Thank you.
yeah, because Joan, what George asked you if you had an alternative proposal.
Oh,
And since there's no one else on the stack, let me just say this. I really disagree with the proliferation of subcommittees. I think that it is making it rather unwieldy. The clusters are set up because most of us go to each of these committees in the social justice cluster. I go to racial justice, I go to immigration justice, and people who go to those meetings, like Diane goes to immigration justice. And so we all tend to go together. And I had envisioned, while we're getting organized, that yes, we would meet regularly as in our separate subcommittees. However, it has to come to a point when we're putting together a 3 to 5 year strategic plan, which is what all of the issue committees have been asked to do. And advancing human rights is its own issue committee, but this lots and lots of subcommittees has made it necessary to start thinking about how does this come together under the rubric of advancing human rights. And it certainly does. It's all a part of that. The UN decade is connected because it is a UN initiative. In 2024, when the UN decade ends, that's why it's slash reparations, because the UN has said it supports reparations for people of African descent worldwide. So that's why it's in the UN cluster, Joan, because, and you'll understand more about that after the Fannie Lou Hamer Human Rights Conference, when Akinyele Umoja, who is an expert on reparations, and he knows all about the UN decade. The unfortunate thing is that the United Nations for Women has not met the last when we talked to Julie. So Barbara and Julie haven't gotten it together yet. And that would kind of end up being a role for the co-chairs to make sure that the committees, subcommittees are actually meeting and functioning over the next 6 months or so. Because I already have a vision, Joan, of the 3 to 5 year strategic plan. So what can we accomplish in the short term over the next 6 months, say by June of next year? And so that's what I'm looking at, these subcommittees meeting, and maybe quarterly, the social justice cluster will meet and talk about how we overlap. But all of this takes the coordination of 2 co-chairs. And I said to you in an email that I would like to serve as actually one of the co-chairs under this structure, because I have envisioned it and I am active in pretty much all these areas. So just to be completely transparent, I'm interested in co-chairing advancing human rights. And I think based on the members who are in ending mass incarceration and the death penalty, and who I expect to be a part of the UN decade, I could certainly relieve myself of those 2 subcommittees. So if Dee, Diane, and Robin have something to say, now would be a good time, because this is a much longer discussion than 1 meeting. We'll be talking about the results of this discussion. And so people can, I'm going to ask people, Joan has kind of voiced her opinion, which sounded like thumbs down on it, but I need to hear from others. Is it thumbs up or down, or I don't know yet, or whatever the comment is? Diane Blay.
Yeah, I'm thumbs up on this. So who would you be co-chair with, Teresa? With Joan?
I have no idea.
Okay, but I think why not cluster a couple things together? There are some overlaps, and I think it's, whatever you can to, I don't know, but I think it doesn't hurt to have this and kind of think along these lines.
Well, thank you, Diane. What about you, Dee and Robin? Since you haven't spoken, I know that George understands it, and we've already talked about it, so I know she's a thumbs up. But what about you, Dee? What do you think about the idea of the structure, the general structure, the general thrust of it?
It looks to me like it was already kind of structured that way. I do like that you've designed a flow chart that is very clear as to what each group is subcommittee is working on. I'm wondering, there has been some concern about like each subcommittee kind of overlapping and doing the same work as another subcommittee. So this would help in that respect, because whomever is maintaining this chart can maybe do like little sub topics under, like what they're working on, so that we're not duplicating efforts in the subcommittees, or where they overlap, maybe connect them. So there's a lot of room for growth. I think this is a great start, and I guess some thumbs up on it.
Thank you, Dee. What about you, Robin?
Well, I think it's ambitious, and that's good. I'm just wondering whether by the time that the conference takes place in December, this will sort of shake out. Will we really have chairs for, or co-chairs for these 5 committees, plus for the Advancing Human Rights umbrella organization? And for example, I don't really know, and I think it will come up in the rest of the agenda, what is our goal for on the issue of incarceration and death penalty? Do we have a goal? There are lots of other groups that work on this. For example, I have these postcards from prison radio. Can you see it?
Robin, if we could just focus in on the discussion at hand, which is the structure chart. Let me just say this, Robin. The conference in December is the Fannie Lou Hamer branch conference. It's going to be an annual conference that we plan for this year, and we'll go. It is not an Advancing Human Rights Committee conference. It's taking up subjects that are human rights subjects that naturally fall under advancing human rights. But the conference will help to inform the work that some of the committees, subcommittees are doing, because we focus the conference on looking at some of the issues that we're looking at in advancing human rights. So we're showing the synergy between human rights and advancing human rights in the issue committee, and what Fannie Lou Hamer as a person was committed to, in addition to some of the other things that I think she would have been totally down with. So that's the conference, which we will talk about, give an update in the announcements. But this is the bulk of our meeting today, to really focus in on this structure idea, because we do need to get to a point where we're better organized and that there's some real leadership development that's possible. And so that's how I see the structure. All of the new women of color who have come into the organization, who are in the Black Liberation Caucus, many of us are staffing the subcommittees. So when you look at all of the subcommittees, except for immigration justice, there is representation from the Black Liberation Caucus. So that's a key development in terms of internal racial justice. You know, I see a subcommittee that George is convening, racial justice, as a kind of overarching thing, because all of this is really about racial justice, gender justice, and eliminating all forms of oppression. So that's what I think. And as I said, I think I'd like to be co-chair. And I don't know if Joan is interested in being co-chair, since she's been kind of acting as chair. So I think that's a larger discussion that needs to take place in the larger committee. And I'm in no hurry to take on anything extra, but I think I would be a good person to serve as co-chair.
How do we decide chairs? How do we decide co-chairs? It's just voting in this group, right?
No. Robin, how do you decide co-chairs in the disarm committee?
The disarm committee decides.
Yeah, and so the Advancing Human Rights whole committee, once we clarify what the whole committee is, Joan has a list of who all the folks are who signed up. And I know who's in it by the people who are coming to these meetings that I've also been going to. We have the weakness of 2 of the subcommittees that have not actually met yet. The weakness of the UN subcommittee will be ended as of October 24, because on the BLC agenda for that meeting on October 24, we will be deciding when that meeting will take place, which will probably be in early November. So we'll be meeting in plenty of time before the actual Fannie Lou Hamer conference. So that way people who are on that committee will probably likely go to that breakout. So we're going to be recruiting people over a wide area. One of the strategic things we're doing with the conference, sisters, is that we are recruiting to WILF. So there will be people who will attend the conference and people who are in the process now who know about the conference who are already joining WILF. We've signed up at least one person in Rhode Island. We've signed up 2 people in New York. And I just found out that a member who was in North Carolina moved to New York. So we're building the New York City branch, as well as working on a branch in Rhode Island. So this is all part of the strategy of building. Now, a 7-person joined us. George, can you see who that is?
Yes, it's Samantha.
Oh, wonderful, Samantha. Glad you're here. Well, let's let Samantha weigh in. So Samantha, can you see the chart?
Yes, I'm just looking at it now.
We've had some discussion about it and most people seem positive, but this is like the first discussion. So we wanted to have our discussion before the whole committee meets so that we can report out what we decided in this discussion. So Joan, if you could hold on while we help Samantha catch up, and then you'll be next on the stack. So
Right.
Samantha, you're looking at the chart. We've talked about it before in a previous meeting. I can't remember which meeting that was where I made this proposal. So this is not the first time people are hearing it, of having an actual leadership of the whole. So Samantha, do you have any comments at this point? Because there are 2 other people on the stack.
No, I'm not too familiar with Barbara Nielsen and Julie Kabukhani, but everything else looks great.
Oh, okay. Well, their committee hasn't met yet. So Joan, you're next on the stack, and then Dee.
Okay, I'm glad to correct you in this case, Teresa. They have met, they've met twice, the UN Committee for Women. They're not, the 4 women came about as something that happened in email. They haven't actually decided on their name. But one thing that hasn't been mentioned is that they are, as of now, having pretty much of a focus on human trafficking, because as far as UN efforts, as far as human trafficking, and I'm hoping that that turns into a new subcommittee on human trafficking, but right now they want to keep it under the UN Women one, but they have been meeting. And
well, where did you get this report from? Because we were just talking with Julie the other day and putting the agenda together, and she sounded like she was being excluded from these discussions. If she said there was something going on about human trafficking, but she said there was nothing going on about CEDAW, which was her interest.
right.
And it was my understanding that those subjects would be combined under UN Women. So why is Julie being excluded?
Well,
and you're saying now?
She's not being excluded. Unfortunately, she did not get to the first meeting that they had. She got to the second meeting, and she is, as you say, she and Barbara actually are focused on CEDAW, the UN Security Council Resolution 1325, which has to do with women at the conflict resolution table discussions, etc., and other matters that are women oriented. Obviously, human trafficking is not just women, even though it affects women a lot. So that's just to update you all on that committee. It's not, we don't need to just get into a big discussion about it, but
Well,
they have been meeting.
it's important in the context of inclusion and equity, because who are the folks who are driving the human trafficking position? Since you said that Julie and Barbara are both interested in CEDAW as well.
Okay,
Who are they?
I don't have the names in front of me. I know Jennifer Bailey is one of them because she's written back and forth with me, because I was saying there's a lot of human trafficking stuff that happens at the local level, and why don't we make this separate? And she explained that there are 3 college students who are involved, and I haven't gotten their names, but 2 are from New York and 1 is from some Florida or somewhere, and they are doing things on human trafficking. And everybody who was the 3 or 4 other people who were at the meeting when that came up thought, oh yes, we're very concerned about it too. And so they are trying to focus on it, even though Barbara, the 2 names you have here, Barbara and Julie, are both very much focused on the other things that the UN is doing as far as in involving the leadership of women. Does that help?
Well, it's important because this is what a co-chair would do in terms of keeping us all in the light and not in the dark on what's happening with the other subcommittees. Because I've been thinking it was just Julie and Barbara who were the conveners, but it's sounding like Jennifer may be also a convener. I do know Jennifer Bailey well, so I could simply call up Jennifer Bailey. So you're right, we don't need to continue on with this, but it's good to know that you think that the UN women have already been meeting. I know for sure that the UN decade/reparation has not met yet.
But you have a plan.
We do. We do.
Meeting.
So, Dee, I think you were on the SAC next.
Oh, I had a couple other things I wanted to say. I'm sorry.
Well, you need to hold on and let Dee talk, and then we'll come back to you. Dee.
I just had a question. I really don't want to pile on any more than what's here, but I'm wondering where kind of patriarchy ending, equal opportunity for women is. I think it would be under the social justice cluster. I could see it going into any of the 3 categories there, because especially women of color are adversely impacted by all 3 subcommittees. And I do see that there's a UN Nations for Women here, but I'm thinking domestically, how women are impacted economically, financially, socially, educationally, where we could kind of fit that into one of the subcommittees.
CEDAW, the convention, I think it is to end discrimination against women, is something you need to know about, Dee, because it does take in all women everywhere, because the human rights aspect of the United Nations is very clear. There's actually a Universal Declaration of Human Rights that was put together in 1948, and everybody should have a little copy of that booklet because it does outline our human rights clearly. And so there is a bit of a learning curve to this work of advancing human rights. And I think that we will get there in the 3 to 5 year plan that we come up with. But that's going to be the role of the co-chairs to help lead that strategic plan for the 3 year, for the proposal for a 3 to 5 year strategic plan. Joan, please.
Yeah, I just have a couple of questions. Dee, that's a subject matter that's very much close to my heart. So more later, right? Are you thinking that that these three subcommittees, for example, getting together would have 1 hour meetings, maybe once a month? And the other
No.
question is, the other thing is, I'm interested in us involving more people, not clustering so that people don't have a chance to talk and to help to develop things, because there are so many people and we're trying to cover so many subjects all at once, even though they do overlap. I think we need the coordination that comes from people being in more than one committee and from the co-chairs, not as I've been doing, but from the co-chairs keeping up with what's going on. Thank you.
Well, what I had envisioned, Joan, was that the conveners of the cluster would come together based on the meetings that they had been having and start looking at the overlap and the intersectionality of the work, not a meeting of all members of the subcommittees,
Good.
but a
Thank you.
meeting
Thank you.
quarterly of the conveners of the subcommittees is how I had envisioned it. So we're at a point now where I think we need to move the agenda, because this is only our beginning discussion, and Joan will be reporting on it at the meeting. So an 8th person has joined. George, who is that? George, I need you to speak and say who you let in the meeting.
It was Margot.
Oh, Margot, you managed to get in. Oh, great. Because I was like, don't worry about it. It sounded too stressful. So glad you could be here, Margot. Well, the chart is on the screen, but we need to move the, well, we do have a few more minutes. It's 1:41 according to my time. So Margot, we're talking about the structure, which is kind of the main agenda item in the agenda I sent out, I think, earlier. So we're at that point of talking about the structure proposal. And we've been getting thumbs up from most folks. Joan is a bit ambivalent about it. Joan, you can lower your hand now, unless you're trying to.
Thank you.
So Margot, please tell us how you're doing since you had a doctor's appointment and everything. How you doing?
I'm doing okay. I was lucky I got in early, and they gave me my shot early. I just got my 3rd COVID vaccination. You know, they're recommending it for people over 65. We should get a booster between 6 and 8 months after we got our 2nd shot. That's what I was called in for.
So what do you think about the chart? Can you see it on the screen?
Oh, I can just see it now. Let me look at it. I'm going to look this carefully. There'll be advancing human rights. I like the schema to coordinate it. I remember I heard what you were saying about the intersectionality. We want to coordinate issues.
Well, good. Well, why don't we take a few moments while maybe Samantha and Margot are looking at the chart to revisit George's expectation for the meeting, George. I've been kind of weaving it in terms of our strategic plan, and you're saying what is going to be the work of ending mass incarceration and the death penalty. We're very close to, I think, the possibility of ending the death penalty because the United States in the world, with all these other countries around the world who ended the death penalty a long time ago, including, South Africa doesn't have it. And so, so George, let's hear from you in terms of your expectations about the work.
Well, part of what I hope that we can do is have in our work plan, when we come up with our 5-year work plan, ways that our local branches can do our part of ending mass incarceration and ending the death penalty. If that's local resolutions or statewide protests and activities, I don't quite know what it looks like. So part of my expectation is determining that and then identifying the resources to make it happen.
And we'll be getting deep into the work. I think we do have to settle this question around structure in order to get to the strategic plan. And so I think over the next few months, hopefully by December, after all of the subcommittees have looked at the proposal, I don't know of any other proposal at this point, but if there are counter proposals, we would certainly be looking at them at our meeting in November, and we'll revisit this proposal and put a little bit more to it. But there's a lot in the chat about patriarchy. So I think this is a good opportunity to invite people to the Umoja Unity Talks, which is going to be a bit of an open meeting on October 30th. And usual time 5 to 7, and most of you have probably received invitations to it. 53 countries have the death penalty. Wow, that's interesting. Well, there are 22 states that do not have the death penalty. Diane, could you say a little bit more about these 53 countries that do have it?
Well, I just looked it up. I mean, of course, we know Egypt, Iran, and other countries have it, but I don't have a total list. I could send it, but I just thought it was interesting to know that. So it's about a quarter of the country.
Oh, you got unmuted by accident, Diane. Can't hear you.
Sorry, yeah, I shouldn't touch the computer when I'm talking. So I'm just saying about a quarter of the countries in the world do have the death penalty.
Wow. Well, I knew in the Middle East, many of the countries have the death penalty in China. And so, but in terms of Europe and many other countries, Canada doesn't have it. The US still has it. But more importantly, since we're the US section, we're concentrating on states that do or do not have it. And there are 22 states that do not have the death penalty. There are 3 states that have a governor moratorium. So that's 25 out of 50. So about half the states are now saying, we really don't think we want the death penalty. So if your state is a death penalty state, and I'm in a death penalty state, so is Georgia in a death penalty state, California is still a death penalty state. That's just the most amazing thing to me, that California is still a death penalty state. I believe Maryland is not a death penalty state. Is that correct, Diane?
I would guess that's the case. I'm just.
Oh, I don't know why I always want to make you from Maryland, but you're in Virginia. So is Virginia a death penalty?
We've gone back and forth on that so much. I don't think we are right now, but I'd have to check.
Well, it's important for all of us to know whether our states are death penalty states or not. That's the first thing we need to do as members of this committee, because Georgia kills a lot of people. And Dee, you're in what state? Minnesota?
Correct. As far as I know, we don't have a death penalty here. I have to research, but last I checked, you could basically dismember someone and drag their body parts all over, and the max they give you for murder is 25 years. So I have to double check. They might have changed the laws, but that was the last I saw.
Oh, well, thank you, Dee, but let's everybody make sure we know by next meeting. And so in terms of moving the agenda, the announcements, I think we're at the announcements. We have about 12 minutes before the end. Is there anyone, Margot or Samantha, who want to say something about the chart? Yeah, thanks. Margot is saying Maryland is an abolitionist state. So Margot, do you have anything to say about the chart before we move to announcements?
Yes, I think it's an excellent scheme. I'm very comfortable with that. The thing I would add is that it is There's of course an intersectionality between those two categories, because the death penalty, for example, certainly is a human rights issue. And at the same time, resolution ARES 62149 calls for a worldwide moratorium on executions with a view towards legal abolition. So once, you know, that was in 2007. I think that was December 17th of 2007. So it is, so the death penalty also is a UN issue. But of course it is, I see this scheme as primarily one involving action at local and state, and of course the state level. And of course, we also want to abolish the death penalty federally and in military law, but that's a separate issue.
Well, I think I'm glad that you think the chart does help to pull some of this together. But that's the quagmire that I think we're in, because the UN Declaration of Human Rights drives all of these issues. That's why I think we have got to build more cohesiveness among the subcommittees as part of the advancing human rights, because all of it is about human rights: mass incarceration, the death penalty, immigration, and certainly discrimination against people on the basis of race. So this is all about human rights. So in terms of the announcements, other folks who know when the other subcommittees meet can tell that, because I think it's important for us to know before we leave this meeting when the other subcommittees are meeting. So if Joan has the information about the UN Women's next meeting, that will be helpful. I gave the plan about the UN decade, but on the Fannie Lou Hamer Human Rights Conference, we're moving along and we pretty much have all of the topic areas staffed. And so ending mass incarceration is a separate topic from the death penalty. We gave the death penalty its own breakouts. And Margot, we're asking if you could be one of the co-facilitators of the death penalty breakout.
Yes, I'd be happy to.
Oh, wonderful. That's good news, because we have somebody from the Southern Center for Human Rights who's a kind of a death penalty expert, and she will join you, so we'll put the two of you together. But we have all of the other topic areas staffed. So who knows when the next immigration justice subcommittee meeting is?
It's the 22nd, I believe, at 6:30.
Oh, no, it's the 21st.
The
I
21st,
remember.
right.
Yeah, the 21st at 6:30. George, when is the racial justice subcommittee meeting?
November 12th at 2 o'clock. Is that right, Samantha? Is that how you remember the time too? It's a
Yes.
Friday.
Yes, I remember it like that.
Okay.
I was going to say, I think it would be a great idea if one person from each meeting, whoever's taking notes or whoever wants to take the lead on that meeting in particular, reports at other committee meetings. Like we would report something at the Racial Justice Committee meeting about what we discussed here, or something like the amount of countries with the amount of countries with the death penalty still we could discuss with the UN meeting at the UN meeting, because it pertains to them. So in the way that we're all facing interlocking injustices, we could have each committee just give a very short update at each other committee's meetings. Does that sound reasonable?
Well, that's the point of the cluster. I think that we would identify these things, but we are distinct subcommittees. The Racial Justice Subcommittee is a committee where I think a lot of this could come in as reports, but I think the Immigration Justice Subcommittee has its hands full. When we hear what's happening in Haiti, it is truly a failed state now. Like Lebanon is a failed state. And so we have some pretty horrible things going on around the world. And what's going on in Haiti is just a disaster, with all of the Christian missionaries being kidnapped and all of that. So there's a lot going on, and I'm hoping in the immigration justice subgroup, there'll be some discussion about that. But I think that's a good suggestion, Samantha. And I would be really grateful if the racial justice subcommittee would take that up to allow us to mention things like what happens here, what happens in the other subcommittees. Thank you for that, Samantha. So we know when immigration justice is meeting, we know when racial justice is meeting. Can we hear when the UN Women Committee is meeting? Acting chair of the Advancing Human Rights Committee, Madam Joan Goddard, when are they meeting?
Gee, thanks a lot, Teresa, for giving me all of these titles. I do not know when they are meeting next. I know they have met twice. Is anyone else who's here part of the UN Women group? And I know, Teresa, you're going to be contacting Jennifer Bailey about the human trafficking aspect that they're working on. I'm saying some of this for the new people who joined us after we talked about it before.
Well, Joan, I'm going to contact Jennifer Bailey about when they're meeting again as well, since you don't know. See, my expectation for you, Joan, as a person that everything gets sent to, that you would know when every committee would be meeting.
Except not everything does get sent to me. So I think that I am doing the most that I can, and the subcommittees are wonderful and are meeting and are doing things and are reporting. At our next meeting on October 28th, we'll hear from a short sharing from each committee, because we need to get on to discussing, for example, the chart that you and George and this committee perhaps are suggesting. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think what happened at the last Advancing Human Rights Committee should not be repeated.
Definitely not. We will stick to the agenda.
Thank you, ma'am. Appreciate it. Because October 28th, and that would be at 8 p.m. Eastern time.
Yes, 5, 6, 7, and 8, as I say.
Okay, great. So it's going to be what? It's going to be.
It's a Thursday.
5. It'll be 5 p.m. on the Pacific Coast.
Yes.
Oh, okay, and 8 on the. Okay,
Yes.
well, now we know when the full meeting is.
That's what
Now we need to decide when we're going to meet again. And George and I have some very big stuff going on November 10th. So I'm asking that we meet after November 10th. And I hear that racial justice is meeting on the 12th. So can we look at our calendars and pick a date in mid-November? So Monday seems to be our style. So can we meet on Monday, the 15th at 1 p.m.?
Okay.
Robin is okay. Diane is okay.
Samantha is okay.
Good. So Dee, are you okay? George is okay. Are you okay, Margot? Monday, November 15th at 1 p.m.
Yes.
Yes, it's okay.
Okay, good. Well, that's our next meeting. Are there any final words from anyone? George, Diane, yes.
I know that Robin said she had several things she wanted to share with us. Can you at least tell us what they are, Robin, or something?
Okay, my point is that this group, we are in a sense a network, and I'm wondering to what degree on the subject of incarceration, we are related to other groups such as prison. I've been eating lunch, so that's why I've been muted.
Well, that's,
And
well,
excuse me,
let's
I'm
do
not
this
finished.
because,
I'd like to
we,
finish my sentence that I
thank you,
started.
Robin.
And I was
Thank
talking
you.
about prison radio and also CURE, Citizens United for the restitution of errants is what that stands for, CURE. I'm wondering whether people know about that group, that these are groups we should network with and figure out how we can maybe be stronger by related to them or make them stronger by being related to us.
Well, I think we will definitely add that topic to the agenda because some of us have been working on this issue for a very long time. So we're connected to the Sentencing Project. We're connected with Amnesty. We're connected with lots of folks who are fighting to end the death penalty and mass incarceration. I noticed that when we started talking about work that was being done in most of your areas, most people weren't